There's a car alarm going off. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Hello, welcome to My Compound Life, where I'm going to be talking about compounding asset, and hopefully with how you approach this or how you approach compounding. Hopefully many of you one day will be free for retirement. Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it. Okay, so here's another episode. I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, right? Because I think for now on the internet, on social media, everyone are either talking about we're so back, right? Bitcoin is so back, or we're so screwed. Bitcoin is so screwed because 4-year cycle ended and so forth, right? And a portion of people might also think 4-year cycle is gone, but Bitcoin follows global liquidity. It follows how liquidity flows as long as quantitative easing being applied from the US government, US Fed. Essentially, Bitcoin will get to another all-time high, right? So that's great, right? So these are signals that can potentially give us some projection on whether Bitcoin will pump, whether Bitcoin will pump for another weeks or months. And I somehow think, these are just signals or noise that are enough to get us to either come out from the asset or to re-enter or to re-accumulate the Bitcoin asset, right? So I think in today's episode, what I want to talk a little bit about the Bitcoin supplies, the Bitcoin cycle, especially the 4-year cycle. I think, believe it or not, I think this is something that you still need to factor in when it comes to accumulation of your Bitcoin and the kind of timing to re-enter again. Okay, so in terms of the Bitcoin total supply, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoins. It's a hard limit coded since Genesis to ensure scarcity, right? So at present, as of today, so far, 19.75 million Bitcoin, right? So 21 million Bitcoin, 19.75 million Bitcoin, not 19.75 US dollars, but 19.75 Bitcoin have been minted or are in circulation, right? This actually represent about 94%, okay? So 94% of Bitcoin already minted in the circulating supply, right? And there's only 1.25 million Bitcoins remaining to be mined, right? And that's gradually done until 2140, right? That's the year, okay? So essentially, that's still like 100 plus years remaining to mine the final Bitcoin, right? But for now, right, for this specific cycle, every block, when I talk about mining, every block that gets generated, right, the miners will get approximately 3.125 Bitcoin, right? So let me reemphasize again, right? Halving event will result in Bitcoin reward getting half, right? So this cycle, it's 3.125. The next cycle would be a little bit over 1.5 Bitcoin per block, right? So you can definitely see the scarcity of Bitcoin. And also take into consideration the lost Bitcoin, around 3.3 million Bitcoin are believed permanently lost, right? This can be result from forgotten keys, deceased owner, hardware failure, etc. Right? So it's really important, if you are buying Bitcoin through an exchange, how you actually store that Bitcoin seed phrase onto your hardware wallet. That's a very important process that you need to take into consideration and follow through, right? And make sure that you permanently keep your seed phrases securely. And at the same time, teach your family, right? Your wives, your kids, your parents, your grandparents on how to get access to your Bitcoin in the event, you never know, in the event that you pass away, right? And of course, Satoshi Nakamoto's estimated 1.1 million Bitcoin that was minted back in 2009 and 2010, so far untouched, and assuming this Bitcoin would never be touched again. So I think the percentage loss would be around 16.7%. So I think as a result, it's quite important for us to chat a little bit. It's a very, very scarce asset, right? In terms of Bitcoin. It's scarce enough that somehow, I believe, every one of us should own some, right? And if you do have some money set aside, which, by the way, every time when I tell you to buy Bitcoin, every time when I emphasize everyone should own some, it doesn't matter when or how much you buy, just buy some. I don't get any affiliate money or payment every time when I say that, right? It's because, number one, I truly have conviction on this asset, and this is my third cycle, and I do see good return, and I'm just an ordinary person. I've worked hard. I've accumulated some small amount of wealth. I've diversified a lot. The beginning of my wealth accumulation, I've been accumulating a lot of property assets in the UK, and now I'm gradually, buying in other countries, not in the UK anymore. Everyone knows why, right? But at the same time, I think one of the most strategic decision I've made was accumulating Bitcoin, right? And I can definitely see real return. The return will not be instantaneous, right? If you're buying Bitcoin through eToro and treating it like stocks and shares, right? Where you want to buy high, sell low, with a gain of 10%, 20%, that's good, right? But I came in to buying Bitcoin, investing in Bitcoin, with the intention of preserving wealth, preserving my hard-earned money over a longer period of time, right? And I wouldn't want that to be eaten up through the country's inflation rate, right? So that's why I've turned into Bitcoin, and it's my third cycle. I've accumulated and I've HODLed, sometimes we call it, for a good period of time. I think for anyone to come in and have that return, you need to wait at least 4 to 5 years time, right? If you somehow got in sometime earlier in the year when Bitcoin was around 71,000, right? And then you came out at $126,000. I mean, well done, right? That was a good speculative buy, right? But personally, I buy, I HODL, I treat it as a bank. I don't sell all or buy all immediately. I practice pound cost average or dollar cost average. This is kind of like the best way for me to, get into the rhythm of buying and selling, and to really gain the maximum benefits from buying and selling Bitcoin, right? And so, I spoke about halving event earlier, right? And I still believe strongly that it does exist, right? Somehow it does exist. It's not because it's a myth or it's a magical algorithm ways of how Bitcoin progress. Actually, it might be to do with algorithm, but something tells me because at every halving event, the number of Bitcoin that gets minted gets half. Essentially, it will definitely cause a supply shock in the market, and that will help the Bitcoin price to go up. And of course, the expectation, we all know that there will be a diminishing of return for Bitcoin. And I think in the not long future, the return will diminish to about 30, 40, 50% return per annum. That's still very good, right? So yeah, I think definitely have that halving event or Bitcoin 4-year cycle in mind, because the next halving will be happening in approximately 880 days time, right? So that kind of falls in sometime in April the 10th, 2028, right? So my next Bitcoin entry, that would definitely happen sometime in the Bitcoin, crypto, or equity bear market. And I somehow think that will be sometime next year, right? When everything, collapse. It's not going to collapse and go to zero, but have the expectation that, if you are buying stocks and shares, if you're holding stocks and shares, are the cryptocurrencies or even your Bitcoin, the price would drop, right? Drop by how much? I don't know, right? No one can tell, right? So that's why, again, it's always good to hold some Bitcoin and to sell some, right? In terms of the percentage breakdown, I'll let you guys decide, right? But for me, I certainly do have a bigger hodling bag, like Bitcoin, a bigger hodl bag that, I'll just keep and not sell. And there's another smaller bag that I'll buy and sell and that's to do with the market rhythm, right? So bear that in mind. The next best entry will be sometime in October, November-ish next year, and that's the time to really buy in. However, if you're someone that are rather new, right, and you kind of have some money in place, maybe let's say somehow you inherited £10,000, right? And you've got a small family and you want to use that money, right? May I suggest that, rather than spend the full £10,000 inheritance money onto a fantastic, memorable family holiday, maybe what you might want to do is to have £5,000, spend that for your family, take them out on a nice holiday somewhere decent. Trust me, £5,000 can go a long way, right? And have the other £5,000 fully invested into Bitcoin, right? Maybe you cannot, you wouldn't be able to hold that cash until next year, right? So in that case, you can buy now, right? And have the expectation that you wouldn't sell your Bitcoin for another 4 or 5 years. Trust me, 4 or 5 years, you would definitely see return, okay? And in that case, I would suggest don't wait and start your accumulation, right? Or if you want to DCA, right? Go in, make purchase of £1,000 first, right? And then monitor the market. Every time it dips further, chuck in £100, £150, whatever, right? That you're comfortable with, right? So that you're constantly in the market, buying the dips and so forth, right? So, but I do know a lot of people that just want to invest and not look at the portfolio. So the best thing could be, Bitcoin, it's still rather low right now at 105K. Put in the £5,000. Don't look at the portfolio until after the next halving event, right? Which I mentioned, the next halving event will be April 2028. And that's when you really see some good return. But at the same time, probably you want to hodl this for a much longer period of time, right? But once you gotten to after the next halving cycle, usually that would be about 100 days after the next halving cycle, you'll be able to see Bitcoin shoots up a little bit. And that's when you kind of look back in your portfolio and you'll be like, I should have put in more. It's giving me more confidence in terms of Bitcoin, right? So so that's the kind of approach I would take. So reminding us all not to forget about the 4 years cycle for Bitcoin, because there's the halving event coming, right? The halving event, the next one will have a little bit over 1.5 Bitcoin gets minted per block, right? As opposed to 3.152 Bitcoin per block right now, okay? So yes, that's the video for today. Thanks for watching. Please please subscribe. Go through the DCA journey with me. I'll be posting more video when I'm really getting back into the serious accumulation period. Right now, for me, I'm kind of in the process of exiting. But certainly, every now and then when Bitcoin dips, like the recent dip to about 98K US dollars per Bitcoin, I actually gone in and bought in a little bit more, right? So to me, I treat a portion of Bitcoin like buy and sell every now and then. That's still giving me good return, right? There's a portion of my Bitcoin, I'll just never touch it. It's actually, all the seed phrases, keys, etc. They're in a bank deposit box somewhere. So that will be wealth that will be retained for the future generations, right? If you're seriously thinking about the future generation, I seriously think Bitcoin would be it, right? Especially coming out from someone who doesn't really have a lot of income, where a lot of assets in the UK are really priced out, right? Like housing, properties, right? So I obviously started with properties about long time ago, must have been about 20 years now, right? I still think properties are great, but for 20 years ago, right? But for now, assets are simply too expensive for any ordinary person with a very, very, ordinary income to build, right? So in that case, I still think anyone can make it with Bitcoin, right? And this store is closing, right? This store is closing very, very soon, right? So if you miss this 4 years accumulation, you have maybe another few more cycles worth of accumulation, then the diminishing of return of a Bitcoin will be reduced, right? And that's where, you're going to have to wait for another asset class to hop onto the bandwagon. And seriously, we don't have that many long years left for that compounding effect, right? So this is why I started the channel, My Compound Life, right? Where we compound early, we get into certain asset, we get in early, get in hard. It's really important that we practice some of that. Okay, so that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Please like, please subscribe. That would really be helpful. And I'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.